bright lights at Silverstone. And the British Grand
I'm an F1 fan, and throughout the year I mainly play and make videos around Formula 1's F1 fantasy game. However, back in May, I went to Brands Hatch to watch the GT World Challenge, a global GT3 manufacturers competition across 4 continents. Since then, I've watched some of the most prestigious and most dangerous endurance races across the globe. And so, I wanted to try and experience these races for myself using custom races in Gran Turismo 7. Hey guys, Jay here, and this is my endurance challenge. I started at the Mount Panorama circuit in Australia for the Bathurst 12-hour and round 1 of the Intercontinental GT Challenge. Things didn't start well as we fell down the grid early. Once I found my footing, I started to make overtakes and back into the top 10. Before making my first pit stop of the race. I soon caught back up to the midfield, making our way through, and then catching up to the front runners. I then made our second pit stop, and back into the top 5, and soon into the top 3. I crossed the line just before the checkered flag, with the Craft Bamboo team being the first to cross the line and onto the podium in P3. And so the chase was on to catch the Scott Taylor Motorsport team. But it would be the home team to cross the line for the win. And I would have to settle for P2. It was a great race for Mercedes AMG, with 8 teams, including myself, finishing in the top 10. The invited KTM would finish in P19. Just ahead of the GT4 Method Motorsport McLaren, which finished last. This meant that the Team 19 Mercedes AMG would win the GT4 category in P18. I then headed to a wet France for the 93rd 24 Hours of Le Mans and round 4 of the World Endurance Championship. By the second lap, I was in the top 5. Everyone would then pit early as the sun came out and the track started to dry. As the sun started to set, I would lose 2 positions to the Toyota and Penske Porsche. But as night fell, the Porsche would make a mistake, allowing me to regain P6. Later in the night, I was making my way through the LMGT3 race. And then, with the Peugeot and Alpine in the pits, I moved up to P2. But the Peugeot would catch me and retake position. And so I made our next pit stop. I would pass the BMW and the Toyota on the straight, and once again take P2, with the undercut paying off. But once again, as the sun rose, the Peugeot would catch me, until later in the morning when it was being held up by the MGT3 BMW. A few laps later, and I made our 3rd pit stop of the race, and would then make my way through traffic as we tried to chase down the leading Ferrari. I then followed the yellow submarine into the pits, which paid off as they would soon have to pit again after opting for softs instead of mediums. Unsure whether there would be an extra lap after the time had expired, I decided to pit one last time for fresh tyres. Again claiming the undercut. But the Ferrari was quick around here, and I soon found myself under pressure. And so it would be the AF Course Ferrari team that would go on to win the prestigious 24-hour Le Mans. The Ferrari and Peugeot were strong around Le Mans. However, the Cadillac that had started on pole had fallen to P7. The Inter-Europol team would take victory in the LMP2 category ahead of United Motorsports. In the LMGT3 category, it would be the AF Course Ferrari team to cross the line first. Meaning victory would go to the Iron Lynx Mercedes AMG team. Next up was one of the longest races on the calendar, the 24 hours at the Nurburgring Nordsleife in Germany, where in the real world it's competed by hundreds of cars across multiple categories including GT3, GT4, touring cars and more. As the sun set, I found myself in a freeway battle with the Ford Mustang and the Falcon Motorsport Porsche team. Then, as night fell, I was finally making some progress. After just a few laps, it was time for our first pit stop, before passing the row racing BMW team into the top 6. The next morning, I was racing the Manthey Porsche team. Before making my second pit stop. I then passed the Porsche again. Before making a move on the Eurosport Audi team. Later in the day, I was chasing down the Red Bull team as we passed through the lower categories. Which would end up helping me out by slowing down the Lamborghini and moving me up into the top 3. Next up was the Ferrari. But I was overtaken by both, dropping me back to P4. At the end of the lap, I decided to pit early, giving me the edge over the Team Bilstein GetSpeed AMG, which had been leading the race. At the end of the next lap, I found the Kondo Racing Team Ferrari spun into the wall, allowing me to retake P2. And with the Red Bull team in the pits, I took the lead. But the Lamborghini was quick, and was soon on my tail. I crossed the line 30 seconds before the checkered flag. And with no time left, the Ferrari and Audi decided to pit, technically being the first to cross the line. With one lap to go, I started to push as hard as I could. But it would be the Red Bull Lamborghini team who would take the victory, with me right behind once again in P2. Things didn't go well for the 3 Porsche teams, nor did it for the row racing BMW. The Kondo Racing Ferrari finished in P4, just ahead of the Eurosport Audi. In the other categories, the WNS Motorsport GT4 Cayman would be the first to cross the line in P13. Just ahead of the Dole Motorsport GMT4 McLaren, winning the SP8T class ahead of the Team Bilstein GT4 BMW. The Asbest Volkswagen beat the Hyundai Motorsports in the touring car category. And the SP40 class Subaru Technicar would finish behind in last place. Finally, the best of the rest was the Molnar Motorsport 992 Porsche in P11. ahead of the Walkenhorst Aston Martin winning the SRO GT4 class. Next up, I headed just over the border to Belgium for the 24-hour Spa and round 5 of the GT World Challenge Europe. After just a few laps, I made an overtake moving into P9. But the following lap, I would receive a penalty for track limits. I soon regained position, and then as the sun set, I was up into P7. As night fell, cars were starting to pit, giving me the lead, before I made my own first pit stop of the race. It wasn't long before I was again moving up the field, and back into the top 10. Soon after, I made a move on the Herberth Motorsport Porsche, and after some more laps, I was back into the lead. It was then time for my second pit stop of the race. As the sun rose, I was working my way through the back markers. A few laps later, and I was in a one-on-one battle with the Gracia Racing Lamborghini, before chasing down the leading A of course Ferrari. We then hit more traffic, and so I decided to follow the Ferrari into the pits. Coming out just behind on the pit exit. Later in the lap, the Ferrari made an error going wide, giving away the net lead. As I neared the end of the race, it was time for one last pit stop, which would then give me the undercut, and my first win during this challenge. Ferrari was the best manufacturer overall with P3 and P5, with 3 Porsches finishing in the top 10. But it was a bad day for McLaren. Garage 59, which had started on pole, and the CSA Racing Team both finishing outside the top 12. The man-filter Mercedes AMG would finish best of the Pro Class cars, with the Herberth Motorsport Porsche taking the Gold Cup in P7. The Tresso Tempo Audi won silver in P6, with the bronze Kessel Racing Ferrari finishing in P5. Finally, it was off to Brazil for the 6 Hours of Sao Paulo and round 5 of the World Endurance Challenge. The Ferrari's tyres would struggle around Interlagos, and so I was soon into P8. A few laps later, and I was already making my way through the LMGT3 race. I would pass the Toyota and the BMW a third of the way through the race. It was then time for our first pit stop, and a few laps later I was chasing down the Proton competition Porsche. Later, I found myself lapping both of the Ferrari hypercars, whilst chasing down the Persian. With not long to go, I pitted for the second and final time, only just giving me the undercut on the Persian. A few laps later, I went wide, after lapping the Toyota and trying to chase down the leading Cadillac. But I would get the last laugh, passing the Cadillac right at the end of the final lap, and winning my second race and the first in hypercar. It was a bad day for both Ferrari and Aston Martin, but good results for both Peugeot and the Porsche teams. In the LMGT3 category, the AF Corsa Ferrari would be the first to take the checkered flag. Leaving the Iron Lynx Mercedes AMG to once again take the spoils. For the Bathurst 12 hours, I set the race to 90 minutes with ×2 fuel consumption and ×7 tyre wear. BOP and boost were set to off for all races, along with slipstream strength left at weak. Rival car difficulty was set to professional. I then set the variable time speed to ×8. Weather was set to random and all penalties were on except for wall collision. The grid was made up of 17 GT3 cars, including myself, 2 GT4s and a KTM. For the 24-hour of Le Mans, I set the race to 2 hours with ×2 fuel consumption and ×5 tyre wear. The variable time speed was set to ×12. The grid was made up of 9 hypercars, including myself, another 2 hypercars tuned down for the LMP2 category, and 9 GT3 cars. The 24 hours at the Nurburgring was also set to 2 hours with ×2 fuel consumption, ×5 tyre wear and ×12 variable time speed. The grid, however, was a mix, with 10 GT3 cars including myself, 8 Group 3 cars across GT4, Touring Car, SP8T and SP4T, and finally a Porsche 992 and a GT4 Cayman. For the 24 hours of Spa, it was once again a 2-hour race, only this time with ×3 fuel consumption and ×5 tyre wear, with ×12 variable time speed. The grid was a straight 20 GT3 car lineup across Pro Class, Gold Cup, Silver Cup and Bronze Cup teams. Finally, for the 6 hours of Brazil, it was a straight 1-hour race with ×4 fuel consumption and ×6 tyre wear. The variable time speed was set to ×6. The grid was split between 11 hypercars and 9 GT3s. All the liveries on the cars I used to race are my own designs and available to download in the GT7 showcase area of the game, as well as my own livery with the KTM and Team 19 GT4 Mercedes AMG used in the Bathurst 12 hour. As for the cars manufacturers not in the game, I used the Expo R12 as it's the only KTM in the game. I used the Audi R18 for the BMW hypercar and the Toyota TS030 hybrid for the Cadillac hypercar. Finally, for the 2 LMP2 cars, I used the Toyota TS050 hybrid with the ECU tuned down to 90. Finally, a huge shout out goes to the wonderful GT7 community, who without making these amazing liveries, videos like this would not be possible. Thank you. And that's it from me guys, it's taken a long time to put this together, a lot of grinding on the 30-minute Le Mans 800 World Tour, to the credits to obtain all the cars. That said, it was a lot of fun and I've wanted to do something like this for a long time, so I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and if you play F1 Fantasy or just love motorsport in general, then please feel free to check out the channel. Thanks again, and all the best. Bye.